thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Denisse Guitarra, Maryland Conservation Advocate for Ottawa Naturalist Society, and I'll be talking today about fighting the good fight with our Latinx communities. And to get started, first, I want to say happy or feliz Latino Conservation Week. If you have been with us the whole week for this series, thank you so much. And if this is the first one that you're coming, don't worry, it's going to be a great one. So I want to get to know a little bit about everybody that's here tonight. I know I see some familiar faces, but some new ones as well. So if you can put in the chat box your name, perhaps you want to share your pronouns or your title or organization or what city or state you're coming from. And I have two quick questions, like what brings you here tonight and what are you hoping to learn? You can either answer both questions or just one, whichever one you feel comfortable. Yeah, and don't be shy. Go ahead and drop your answers in the chat box.
We have
Oh,
Orietta.
Orietta, thank you. Thank you, Orietta from Frederick, and thank you for coming to support AMS and myself. Before I dive deep into my experience as a Maryland Conservation Advocate, I'm just going to share briefly with you some community agreements so that we have an enjoyable experience tonight. So we want to have a positive experience for everyone, be nice to everybody, and also we like this phrase, step up, step back. If you're perhaps speaking too much, give a chance to someone else to step in, and vice versa. If someone is not speaking up, take a chance and do ask your questions. Oh, and I also see in the chat, Molly, thank you so much. She's coming from Baltimore and interested in becoming a master naturalist. Wow, great. Thank you. And I see you waving, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. Continue with our community agreement, freedom of expression. So you're free to also say what you're feeling in a respectful way, for everyone tonight. Also, even though we're still, connecting via Zoom, we have the chat box, so make sure that uh, you know, chat with one another, share your experiences as you're going through the event. Also, make sure to follow us on social media so that you can also continue the conversation there as well. And lastly, don't make assumptions. And if there's a question, feel free to ask. All right, so before we get started, I'm gonna go briefly over today's agenda. And so I'm gonna start a little bit talking about myself, and then I will go into what our ANS Conservation Department does and how my work as a Maryland Conservation Advocate actually fits into the ANS Conservation Department's priorities. And then the second half of the presentation is kind of divided out evenly between community outreach and policy and advocacy. For community outreach, I'll be talking about my engagement with the Latinx families at Long Branch in Silver Spring, Maryland. And in the advocacy and policy campaigns, I'll be focusing on the general plan, the climate action plan, and the highway expansion project. All right, so a little bit about myself. As I said before, I am Denisse Guitarra. I use she, her, and ella pronouns. I am the Maryland Conservation Advocate, and you can follow me on Twitter as Denisse_Avis. I am originally from Ecuador. But I've lived in the US for a long time. I have a bachelor's in biology and a master's in biodiversity, wildlife, and ecosystem health. And before coming to AMS, I was actually working as a bird researcher, doing a lot of cool bird studies, internships, latest one with Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, doing bird banding and doing outreach to communities to learn about the importance of birds and why we should care and protect about them. I also got a chance to go to the Galapagos Islands and work on invasive plant species. So that's the picture of me with a tortoise. That's actually me at in the Galapagos Islands a couple of years ago. And actually, this cool picture here is me with ANS already when we did a fabulous climate action um, protest actually back in 2019 when we could all meet in person. So yeah, fun times. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the ANS Conservation Department. And you might see two QR codes here. So if you have your phone handy, you can kind of scan it with your phone and using your camera option, and then it will take you to our ANS conservation website and blog. And now I will have these QR codes all throughout the presentations for different website links. So please make sure to make use of this, but I will also be dropping these same links in the chat box so that you can access them either way. So the Conservation Department program is actually divided into 4 conservation priorities, what we call them. And these priorities is what we are focusing our work throughout the region. So I'm the Maryland Conservation Advocate, but I actually have colleagues that do the same work around the region. So we have the DC Conservation Advocate and the Northern Virginia Conservation Advocate. And we also have water quality monitors, volunteers, managers, and we all actually work under these kind of 4 pillars. So the first one is the climate crisis. We know that climate change is real, it's here, and we need to prioritize it. The second one's protecting biodiversity and habitats. And the third one is increasing human and health and access to nature, especially of BIPOC individuals and especially of Latinx individuals and communities, underserved, vulnerable communities. And the fourth one is sustainable land use. And you will see throughout my presentation that all of these conservation priorities are kind of sprinkled throughout my work. And if you look at our blog post too, you will see that they are also found across all of our department's work as well. All right, so now I'm going to dive deep into our community engagement with the Long Branch Silver Spring community. So I'm going to start off by showing you where is Long Branch. So where have I been doing this work? And if you see on this map, Long Branch is actually the name of the community, but it takes its name from the stream that runs through the community. And Long Branch is this stream right here, found in Montgomery County in Maryland, but right next to the Prince George's County. It's kind of bordering. And Long Branch, Sligo Creek, the Northwest Branch, the Northeast Branch, and the Anacostia River, they're all part of the Anacostia Watershed. And then if we zoom in a little bit more, you will see that right next to Long Branch, there's this elementary school called Rolling Terrace Elementary School. And that's right behind this elementary school. That's where we worked. And if you're very familiar with this area, you might know these streets, Piney Branch, University Boulevard. That's kind of the area where we've been doing this community outreach work. So even thought this is a project that we're still in there working. I'm going to briefly touch upon what we did in the first year of the project and then what also what we're doing right now. So in our first year, which was back in 2019, we did a series of 6 bilingual, family-friendly community engagement events that consisted of doing a creek critters event, a nature walk with bilingual staff, and we partner with a lot of social services organizations that were based out at Long Branch. We had over 200 participants that came to our 6 events. Four of those 6 events were actually took place right behind the elementary school. Um, so right here in this area. And then two of them were actually outside of Long Branch. So one was at Little Branch and the other one was at the Anacostia River itself. If I go back to the map, actually, Little Paint Branch is somewhere up here above Long Branch. So, and the Anacostia River, of course, is down here. So the families really got this like full experience of the watershed, you can say. And the main reason why we were focusing on Long Branch for this project was because the Anacostia watershed is one of the most heavily polluted and impacted because of so many factors, really. And there have not been any groups or organizations working specifically with the Long Branch community and the Long Branch stream in particular as part of the Anacostia watershed. And then we also had a total of 2 focus groups where we kind of got a sense of what the communities were thinking and feeling throughout our project and ways that we could improve. So as I mentioned, this was not just work from AMS. Actually, before I move forward, this picture on the bottom right is when we went to the Anacostia River with 35 or so of our family members from the Long Branch community with the help of our Anacostia Watershed Society friends that have boats and we were riding the Anacostia. So it was a really fun time. And up here is what we were doing with creek critters, families were going into the stream and collecting their own macroinvertebrates and analyzing them later and identifying them and using our creek critter apps to see and kind of grade the water quality. So going back to our partners, actually, so these are kind of some of the partners that were helping us out during our Long Branch project and still continue to help us out. So being our most important partner is our social services partner based at Long Branch, and they do a whole range of community engagement events, ranging from health to food to education. They're a really great organization. So please look them up and follow them as well. The second one's Friends of Sligo Creek. They're a watershed group. They do work not only in Sligo Creek, but also in Long Branch. Linkages to Learning is an educational social services organization based at the elementary school where we've been doing our work, Rolling Terrace. And then, of course, our government agencies, Montgomery Parks, Montgomery Planning, and then Corazon Latino and the Dance Exchange are other 2 nonprofits that kind of jumped on to help us out during our events. But once the project had already started, and TBT Trust is here because they were our funders, of course. So what were the impacts to the community? This is still focusing on the first year, but kind of going into the second year. So the first impact is that stream, people were able to see this connection that stream health equals community health. If we have a healthy stream, lots of biodiversity in the stream, then that means that we are going to have a healthy community for ourselves and for our environment. Another great thing that we saw was that parents and children were able to connect with one another and nature and their community. So really, these events really brought not only families but communities together. And I think the third most important part is that people and the families in Long Branch started asking questions is, okay, why is my stream like this? Like if we go farther up, why is it cleaner? If we go down, why is it even like more polluted? What can we do to improve it? and parents actually were the first ones to even come out with their kids, be like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, we've never even seen this type of programming before. And it really is a great example of, the careers that our children can aspire to have, because this has never been done before. So, kind of taking that feedback and that motivation that the community members and our community partners we saw in the first year, we then applied for more grants, and we were able to now lead our second year into the project with the community. And this new project is called Si Se Puede. So these are pictures now from this year, starting in May, and actually very recently, last Saturday, I just had my last Long Branch event pretty recently. And this is the Si Se Puede project. So the focus on this year's project is to grow a community of empowered environmental leaders in Long Branch. So we're going to do a year-long project where we're going to improve the health of the stream and the stream valley park through a project that the community members, the families themselves, are going to take the lead and kind of go for it. And all the other partners, we're just going to be supporting them, really. And so far, even though we haven't narrowed down on that one kind of idea or group of work that we're going to do, we've already have like 3 ideas, which are listed there. One is working with the management companies. A lot of the families that live along Long Branch live in apartment buildings, so they want to work with their management companies to make sure that there's enough trash and recycling pickup, or they want to work with the government agencies and authorities to increase trash removal in the park or invasive plant removal. And then the kids were really interested in doing more litter pickups all throughout the park. So if you want to learn more about our Si Se Puede project, you are welcome to follow us. We have a page on our blog. So I can drop it in a little bit, but I'm also going to move us forward. Oh, you can also scan the code to answer any questions you might have about outreach specifically. Serenella, let me know if you see any other questions on Facebook too.
Yeah, right now we don't have any questions in the chat, Zoom or Facebook, but I want to take this opportunity to remind our audience that we'll be monitoring the chat or the comments on Facebook. So if you wanna drop a comment, share this video, or ask a question, please use the comment section and the chat box to do that. Thanks, Denise. One of the interesting factors that I have been witnessing our conservation department do is the very intentional engagement that you are doing with the Long Branch community. Not necessarily a one-off, type of engagement, but more of a collaboration and a long term process of any of the advocacy opportunities that you've been developing. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So partnership building has definitely been one of the most like long-term processes that I think have taken part both in year one and year two of the Long Branch project. And I've been at AMS for a little bit over 2 years, and I was kind of just I already came to this position knowing that the Long Branch project was going to get started. So even before my time, our ANS conservation director and team had already, like, I think a year before the project actually got started, I started having conversations like, oh, what are the partners, doing the research, kind of pinning down which location we're going to start doing this very close knit community engagement work. And even as the project has progressed and we have actually kind of grown from just kind of like an events type of program to a more intentional, okay, now let's let the community lead the project. There have been a series of conversations and kind of tests and trials of what works and what doesn't work. And I think, to this, the biggest, I think, challenge has been COVID. We went from doing outreach to schools, to Mom's Coffee, that they usually set up, to and farmers market back in 2019, to now seeing the reality of the community that it has really struggled in this last year, where our community partners cheer, they've been leading food distribution every week for the past since the pandemic started. And that's where now we've had to go to do the outreach for our events, because there's so many families that are struggling to even put food in their table. And I see a question from Molly in the chat box, so I'm gonna go ahead and answer it.
Thank you.
Is the critters activity in public lands, and is it hard to get permission from the county to gather there? So it's on Montgomery County's public land. Yes, park. It's a parks land, and we haven't had that much trouble actually asking permission. Really, as long as we let our parks partners, because Parks Montgomery Parks is one of our partners. We let them know ahead of time, like when we're doing programs. Usually that works fine, as long as we kind of manage each other's like schedules and we don't overlap with any other programs they might be doing in the same parks. And then Creek Critters is it's a program that we have at AMS, and I'm happy to follow up with more Creek Critter questions too later. All right. Do you have any other questions?
That is all for now. Thank you, Denise.
Okay, awesome. So we'll move forward. And next, I'm going to talk a little bit about my Maryland advocacy and policy campaigns, both at the state and kind of at the county level. But before I dive deep into the actual campaigns, I wanted to pause a second to talk a little bit about why it's so critical that Latinos are in policy and advocacy. Um, and of course, I can talk about this for many hours or days. And so I'll try to be as brief as possible. But I think I kind of, based on my experience, I think these are why the reasons why we need more Latinos in policy and advocacy. First is representation. Latinos, we're growing. Everywhere in every city, in every state, across the nation, we need to have elected officials that look like us, that think like us, that have lived in the ways that we've experienced and the ways that think about our communities, our environment. So it's really about, kind of evening things out for everyone, and so that no one group really has more to say or less to say in any sphere, really. The second one is that you know your community the best, really. Everybody can be an advocate for anything, really, because you know what's happening in your house, in your apartment, in where you're from. And those are eyes that, government agencies, they don't see. They don't have enough staff to go everywhere where you're living your everyday life, where you're working. So that's why you can be the best advocate for your own community. Third, your voice counts, your voice matters. Uh, and your thoughts and opinions really have a say on everything that's happening, both at any level, really, county, state, federal. It really matters. Um, Another point is environmental justice. As I will show you throughout my campaigns next, a lot of the policies, unfortunately, that currently exist have unfortunately not we're not made in the best intentions for everybody. Basically, there are racist policies out there, and the only way that we can combat those bad policies is to kind of bring environmental justice, social justice into today's decision making processes and changes that we need to kind of fix the past. And lastly, this all policy and advocacy has a direct impact on everybody's lives, from where you work, where you live, where you go to school. Everything is connected. So I will now transition to the next phase, but I'm happy to answer more questions about this too. So keep putting them in the chat box. All right, so I'm going to start off with kind of the Maryland focused, sorry, the Montgomery County focused campaigns, and then we'll go kind of more broadly afterwards. So the first one is Thrive 2050, Montgomery County's new general master plan. So, what is Thrive 2050? Thrive 2050 is a blueprint plan for Montgomery County for the next 30 years. It's actually has three pillars, and the first one is the economy, equity, and the environment. Why should you care about Thrive Montgomery 50? So this is specifically important if you live, work, or just come to visit Montgomery County for any reason. It's going to really impact any way that you interact with the county, especially if you live and work in the county. And now that the plan actually was released, the final draft was released just a few months ago, and the Montgomery County Council is actually revising the draft as we speak. They just had one work session this week, and they're going to have another work session next week. But this is like a continuation of series of work sessions. And even though like hearings have passed, you can still, send an email to your elected officials if you get a chance to review the plan. And if you find something that doesn't sit well with you, that you think that could be improved, they're still taking feedback. It's not too late in the game. And as I put here, why it should matter that you get involved is also the implementation part, which is all the policies that are actually going to pass afterward. So like for instance, ANS has found that even though it does speak to the protection of the environment, it doesn't go as far as saying that we should stop like tree loss. Let's kind of advocate for no net loss to forest. So we have made in our comments that a major centerpiece of our comments. Um, and as I put here, the one of the committees in the county council committees, the Fed committee, will be having a meeting on July 26th. The other part that's been missing, and one that's really focused by one of our partners, which has been working on this issue for many years as well, is ensuring that there's enough housing for everyone in the county. The county is expected in the next 30 years to receive 1 more million people in the county. We are already at 1 million, so in 30 years it's going to be 2 million. And we just don't have enough housing for everyone. And the plan goes into kind of laying those policies of where should we develop, how we should prioritize urban design and development. So it's very interesting, and I have a lot to say for it, but if you want to actually learn more about it, I will be dropping the link to our work on Thrive in the chat box, and you can read more about it. I'll briefly touch upon this graph, which is found in the Thrive plan. I think it's very crucial, really, of why you should care about Thrive, and it's basically all the blue area. This which areas is predominant race of any group in the county. And the blue is are areas that are predominantly white, either 50% or 70%. But then everything that's not blue, so that's yellow or green or red, that means that other groups that are not white kind of make up the largest chunks of those areas. And as you can, and yellow specifically says that no group is predominantly, no more than 50% of the people living in those areas are from one group. So Hispanics or Latinx make up 20 or 25% of the Latino population in Montgomery County. And these numbers are only expected to grow in the next 30 or 50 years. So it's really crucial that we all get to be part of these decision-making processes. And that's the QR code for the same link I just dropped in the chat. You want to take a chance to scan it? All right. I'm going to briefly talk upon the other Montgomery County plan. So unlike the previous plan, which was more land use and looking into the future, this one is the Montgomery County's Climate Action Plan, which also looks into the future, into up to the year 2035, but it's focused on climate change. So Montgomery County's goal is to reduce its emissions by 80% by the year 2027 and 100% by the year 2035. So as you can imagine, there's little time and a lot of work ahead. And the county executive's office has been putting together for the last 2 years or so a what is this called the Montgomery County Climate Action Plan, and it's quite a big document. It was released. The final draft was just released like over a month ago, and just like the Thrive Plan, the Climate Action Plan is now in this implementation phase. So now it's the critical part is like, okay, so how do we actually achieve all these kind of ambitious goals and policies that are in these plans? Specifically for BIPOC, for Black, Indigenous people of color, and Latinx communities, I think it's very critical um, to get involved in both plans, but I would say even more so in the climate action plan because like in this graph on the right that I have is directly taken from the climate action plan, and it shows everything that's inside these black lines are um, communities where we have a 50% or more of vulnerable communities based on the social vulnerability index, and that they have low tree coverage. So, and these are also the areas where a lot of BIPOC communities live, especially Latinos. So, this is clearly an example of how this issue is not just a climate change issue, it's an environmental justice and an environmental equity issue that we need to plant more trees in urban areas, especially where we have the largest concentrations of Latinos and BIPOC communities. Um, Similar with this graph, this one in kind of the tan beige color that you see in this map is the air toxins that are greater than the median average in the county. So that's, you can see that's kind of more down county, all of it. And then all these purple areas that you see are where we have an average population of Hispanic or Latinos and or low income areas. You can see that there's a clear overlap, which means that a lot of our Hispanic households are living in hazardous air locations. And then if I go back to the tree one, they kind of overlap. I mean, you kind of see it. Um, And partly it's also all these like black lines that you see through here are highways, major highways. So um, I will talk about highways just in a bit, but I want to point out that partly is this like overlap is because they're living close to highways as well. And then let me just put in there the our QR code, and this one is for the climate action plan and how you can see what ANS has been doing. But if you want to get more involved, please email me. There's a bunch of coalitions that are seeking more input from community residents about both plans. Specifically for the Climate Action Plan, there's the CAP Coalition or the More Network CAP group, which is more focused at looking at the CAP with an equity lens. So we're definitely looking for people to join these two groups. Um, for the More Network, actually, I'll briefly talk about them. They're more of a social um, like equity and social justice group. And at first, like over 6 months ago, they really had briefly known about these two plans, but they weren't as engaged. But luckily, with the help of various partners, including ANS, we've been kind of leading them to have these conversations with the county county government, county staff, so that both county staff and more social justice and equity groups have these very like deep and meaningful conversations. So you can sort of see this pattern that we're trying to be intentional, not only in our outreach, but also in our policy and advocacy, because that's really what's going to take into bringing true environmental justice into the environmental movement. I know I feel like I've been talking a lot, so I promise I'm almost done, so I'll take questions. Uh, so this one is about the Beltway, and now we're kind of stepping back and looking advocacy not from just Montgomery County, but looking more regional. And this one we have an action alert, which you can take action. So okay, before I proceed, let me put it in the chat box so you have it in there already. All right, so you might have heard about the Beltway expansion. This is Governor Hogan's I-495, also known as the Beltway, and I-270 highway expansion. If you're not familiar with the area, the Beltway is this highway that's shaped like a circle or a belt that goes around DC. And right here it goes through Montgomery County, and right here through Prince George's County and across the Potomac into Northern Virginia, Fairfax specifically. And that's the 495, the Beltway, and then 270 is the highway that connects the Beltway from Montgomery County to Frederick County. So Governor Hogan has been trying to expand the whole span of 270 and 495 for years. However, adding, I don't know, you probably, if you're around the region and actually anywhere in the US this whole week, you've seen our skies have been very, very hazy. And that's all because of all the wildfires that are happening on the West Coast. Now, imagine how fires from the West Coast are impacting us on the East Coast. With more pollution from cars, events like the ones that happened earlier this week are not going to be like happening like occasionally during the summer. It's going to be like something that kind of sticks around the whole time. And and that's what we would get if we add more lanes on either 270 and 495. So adding more lanes is a detrimental impact to our people and an environment. There's going to be an increased air pollution, water pollution. Uh, it won't solve the traffic congestion actually. So there has been studies that actually this bottom portion of 270 expanded back in the late 90s and early 2000s already. And instead of like relieving traffic right here, it actually made traffic worse in a few years because of this thing called induced demand. So it appears like it's going to solve traffic, and in a few years, it actually kind of helps to create more sprawl because people are going to start living out further, and and that's why the traffic comes back. So that's why adding more lanes is definitely not the solution to traffic congestion. And instead, what we've been advocating for is that we need better and more transit solutions, like more train, more BRT, bus rapid transit, more climate friendly solutions that will not contaminate our air and our water or cause sprawl. So this Wednesday, there's a critical vote happening in Annapolis. The Board of Public Works, which is made out of Governor Hogan, Treasurer Cobb, and Comptroller Francho, they're going to decide on whether they allow what is called the pre-development contract to proceed. And if it goes through, if it gets approved, then basically that's another step in their direction of approving this you'll conceive plan. So if you want to take action now, I encourage you to go to our ANS blog, specifically our Beltway blog, and send your letter to the Board of Public Works before this Wednesday. Share around that link with your friends and your family members, and make sure that we get as many letters as we can to oppose this project. And you can also scan the QR code right here as well. Oh, and actually, let me go back one step back. This will actually have direct impact on BIPOC communities because right along, like right here in Gatorsburg, or also Silver Spring, and especially, Prince George's County, there's a lot of Latinos and BIPOC individuals that have businesses, schools, and workplaces right next to the Beltway. And if we are going to add one or two or four more lanes, as some want, that's all going to be taken down. So imagine the impact that it's going to have on all these people losing their homes, their businesses, just because Hogan wants to add more lanes. So something else to consider. And before I take more questions from people, so still drop them in the chat box, of course. I want to do a shameless plug that my department, the conservation department, is hiring for our DC conservation advocate position. Now the deadline to apply is this Sunday, July 25th. So, use your QR code right now to scan the job post site. You can also go to our ANS website to find out more, and I'll drop the link also in the chat box. You can find all our details. So please, please, please apply or send me questions if you have questions about how to apply. And with that, I'm gonna leave this contact me page, but happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you so much, Denise. It is always great to see what advances we have been able to do in the outreach to the Latino communities. Now, um, I want to be mindful that maybe in our audience, there might be people who are trying to reach Latinos in their different regions. What type of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice would be to just connect with the communities themselves. So even if that's like, I know that's a bit easier said than done, but if there's like a social service organization, if there's already like kind of established trusted partner in that organization, I would encourage you to go to them and, start being part of their programs. Like, I don't know if they're doing an event at the community and you want to offer like tabling at their event so that they just get to know you. That would be a first start. I think, at least from my experience, it's been that, community members really trust you more if they see you in the community, and that they see you not only for like your event that you're trying to sponsor, but that you're actually very intentional and you kind of join the community, in whatever shape or form they are used to already interacting. So it might mean going to the schools. I know because of the pandemic, things might be closed down, but there's a lot of opportunities also through, through Zoom and the school programs as well. Um, yeah, I think that would be an option, and happy to answer any other questions as well or provide any other thoughts or ideas.
Thank you. I want to see, you mentioned that our friends should reach the community leaders to get in touch with the community. What type of leaders are we talking about?
So there, like for instance, if we're not, it really depends on the community. So perhaps there's already like established, like a friends group, an environmental group. Um, Perhaps there isn't. Perhaps there's more of like a school-based program or a health or social-based program. So they're advocates already for their community, and you might not initially think that they are, but as I said before, everybody's the community for their advocate. It's usually people that have been already with the community for a long time, that know the community the best and know how to reach them, also the best. Another option actually would be to reach out to church groups. We fortunately through our for our case, some of our existing social services program connections, they were already pretty linked to other networks within the community. But I know from talking with other colleagues, like tapping into the churches has worked for them, or like like community centers as well. Um, yeah, and schools, definitely schools is a big draw if you can get the parents. Um, it also depends on what the audience you're trying to reach, if it's kids or if it's whole families. But schools are actually a very great way to kind of just get the whole family.
Awesome. I also am mindful that maybe not everybody might be thinking of the different challenges that our community members face, or the different fears that our community members face when trying to engage into advocacy efforts. Can you speak a little bit on what type of challenges have you been able to bypass, and how did you make that happen?
Yeah, for advocacy, I would say that um, sometimes like I'm usually the only Latina in the room, and that in itself can sometimes be intimidating. And when I bring in another partner, that's whether it's Latino or Latina herself, or uh, from another BIPOC or minority group, I think it's usually like the first meeting, that kind of interaction with government agencies, that's the most intimidating one. But once you get over that and kind of get to know the people afterwards, I think that's where the true conversations start to happen. And I think another another thing that definitely AMS has been kind of spearheading this is, kind of putting different groups together into these conversations. Not just like BIPOC leaders and social services and environmental leaders kind of siloed in their own worlds, but kind of bringing everybody together, and having conversations in that way as well. Um, and also another thing is also, making these meetings and options available for everyone and accessible to everyone, um, in terms of time, in terms of language. I know that sometimes, for instance, in the Thrive outreach, we definitely, like, talk with our Montgomery planning staff that they should make sure that, if they're going to have like a Zoom event or like a web-based event, that people didn't really have to like provide as much information just to join the event. Like they could actually just get a link and then be able to join, or have a calling number and make sure that the event is available during a time that most people are available, whether it be the evening or the weekend.
Very cool. Thank you so much. This being the tail end of the presentation, it's our tradition to open the microphone and invite our audience on Zoom to join us and ask questions using your voices and your video. Do we have anyone in the audience that wants to take us on that offer?
Well, I would just like to say thanks to Denise for sharing all that information. And I really enjoyed just what you were talking about now about outreach to the Latinx community nearby, because that's what I'm interested in doing. I was an ESOL teacher and I know a lot of the families near the elementary school where I taught, but now we really want to try to have outreach for the county park, the Baltimore County Park, Oregon Ridge Nature Center. And it's hard. It's like, where do you begin? So you did give me some good ideas about where to begin.
Awesome. Yeah, and actually I should add, now you remind me of something else. So for our outreach events, we always make sure that we put a phone number as a contact person. So like we provide the link of like where people can sign up or find out more of our events, but also having that bilingual contact person that people can call in or send a text message. We use a lot of text messages to get the word out about events, and text messages seem to work out pretty well.
Mhm.
So best of luck, and I'll drop my email in the chat box. So if you have more questions or anybody has more questions, you can feel free to email me.
Thank you. It's a good presentation.
Thank you.
I see a second person right there waiting their turn. Lee, would you like to?
Oh, yeah, I just turned on my video just for the heck of it. But I just wanted to say, so I work with Corazon Latino, one of the partners of Audubon National Society, and um, I no longer live in DC. Right now I live in Arizona, but I lived in DC for 21 years. And I'm very familiar with what you're talking about with the 270 expansion and, the push to widen 495, and which is just so absolutely the wrong thing to do. So I'm really, thank you for bringing this up and for bringing up the Thrive, the plan, the county plan. I'm definitely going to share these links with my friends and family who still, I still have a lot of people in the DMV. So I'll definitely be sharing those links, and thank you for talking about all of that.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And hello from Felipe.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see a new person in our audience, Narcisa Jangwa. Narcisa, hello. Welcome to our Naturally Latinos audience. Would you like to say hello or ask a question? I think not. Okay. All right. So Alison Pierce, our deputy director, sends thank you to you, Denisse, for a wonderful presentation. Um, so thank you all for being here, for staying with us. And Denisse, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I hope we get to see you next week. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.